People ask us all the time how we got into wall printing. This journey started with two engineers, a love for building things, and an obsession with figuring stuff out the hard way. Hey, we're Marc and Marc, co-founders of the Wall Print Academy. And after nearly 15 years of building businesses together, we're flipping the mic around and sharing our own story. In this episode, we're taking you back to the beginning, from the dorm rooms at Queen's University to garage-built CNC machines to discovering a printer that could print on walls. We'll walk you through the unexpected pivots, the hard-earned lessons, and the wild path that brought us from Longboards to launching one of the fastest growing educational platforms in wall printing. And if you're thinking about starting your own wall printing business, now's the perfect time to join the Wall Print Academy. Inside, we break down everything we've learned, the wins, the hard lessons, and the shortcuts we wish we'd known sooner. From gear and pricing to marketing and design, it's all there. The link's in the description below. Check it out and give yourself the best shot at success. All right, let's get into it.
Let's jump into it, man. We've been in this wall printing game for a while, but we've been friends for a lot longer and business partners for a lot longer.
Very much so.
We get asked all the time, how do we met? How the hell we found ourselves here?
Yeah.
And how that all shook out. So I figure we take some time and tell the story.
Definitely, man. It's something that comes up, and when we explain it, takes a while. You know, that's one thing I'll say about our story is it's all over the place. But if you've been researching wall printing at all, like you've probably seen us, you probably even talked to us. I mean, we've been doing this for as long as anybody at this point. But our story goes way further back, all the way back to engineering school. So where we met was,
well, when is it? 20? Give people some fucking time perspective.
2009.
2009. Yeah, 2009.
Yeah, 2009. That's when we both were graduating university, mechanical engineering degrees, and some like pipe dreams of like maybe doing something a little bit different than jumping into the corporate workforce. We technically met because we both at the same time randomly on the same campus were each interested in designing longboard skateboards. That was like, I was obsessed
how did that play out? It was basically we had the same circle or the same network, but we never really crossed paths over 4 years of university. And I got into longboard skateboards because it was a way that I could add 8 minutes to my snooze time and get to class, that much faster. So it was all downhill. I borrowed a buddy's skateboard and then ended up deciding to build my own as an engineer would be like, well, this doesn't seem that hard. And so I had the press in my kitchen and, I was gluing up boards, and one of our mutual friends came by and be like, what are you making? A longboard. They're like, have you ever met Marc Tisdall? It's like, I've heard the name, but I mean, I'm sure we've crossed paths. They're like, I think he's doing the same thing. Yeah. And it was like, wow, all right. I didn't think anybody else around was doing this, and came to your place.
Yeah.
A similar setup, we'll call it.
Yeah. Pretty typical like college house, operation we had going on there, kitchen table stuff. But yeah, it was cool, man. And then pretty much from that point on, I pretty much stopped leaving you alone with any idea I had, including like, hey, let's try building these and selling these. Right. So
yeah. I mean, I remember it. I remember going as far as like actually planning, like we booked time, and I didn't even go to class on a regimented schedule, let alone like booking time to have a meeting. I'll be at the bar to talk about a business. Like, can we do this as a bit? Do you remember that at the Brass?
Yeah.
With me, you and Graham, like we sat down like, okay, is this a real thing? We know how to make these things. Is there an actual market? So that I kind of planted the seed of business and longboards at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And then, post graduation, obviously, like we each respectively had our own ideas. I actually went back to New Hampshire to live with my folks for a little while. I was dating my now wife, which was guiding my decision making a lot more than I wanted to admit. Yeah, and that was we stayed in touch. It was always a very real thing. The first thing I did when I graduated was buy myself a little DIY CNC routing kit, because for me, like the obsession really took hold. Not just like, can you make them, but like, can you make the machines that make them? Right. It's like once you start seeing like what CNC routing can do, and like, wow, so we can like completely vary the shape. We can change how we built them. Like we could do it automatically. Like that just infected me pretty much from the outset. So that was the first thing I did that summer, was build a little 2 foot by 4 foot CNC machine in my parents' garage.
I mean, I think that looking back at it now, I think it says a lot about us. It was not so much about the end product. It was always about the process. It was like as much interest in the process as it was the end product. And, for you, it started at the CNC machine.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah, absolutely. And then what really kind of like brought it into like a whole different dimension was going in when I went and did that fine woodworking course. You know, that was always my idea, was like, let's go learn how to like manipulate wood. Let's make really beautiful boards, which like is a really cool idea. I still love that idea. Handmade, you know, well, why don't you tell them a little bit about the style that we kind of created?
yeah, not being artists, as we've continually touted ourselves as not being. You know, we have no real artistic background, but a lot of the skate culture was around these really busy, aggressive graphics, and we really wanted to like simplify it. We appreciated the beauty of natural wood grains and things like that, and so it was really just a matter of bringing in different wood species, whether it be domestic or exotic. And we had woods, you know, Paduke, Purple Heart. These are reds, purples, yellows that were naturally that color. These woods exist in nature as this color, and so when you bring those types of wood grains together, you get this incredibly stunning pattern of colors and textures and patterns that were super impressive. Something that really resonated with us, and then you know resonated with our customers eventually.
Yeah. And then, so from Longboards, you know, with very modest success all around, it turns out like being able to make the boards doesn't mean we were well positioned to make a business out of it. We went our separate ways and each kind of went into the workforce, right, and ended up with sort of semi careers, as it were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I think we're critical growth. I mean, for me, I look back at it as like, as much as I hated that 5-year span, and I tried to start another landscaping business, which I very quickly realized I didn't want to be laying patio slabs in 40-degree heat in the Toronto summers.
I forgot that that's what you did when you went back. That's right. You were working with your uncle.
Yeah. Started a new landscaping business, you know, did a few jobs. I was like, well, this is not sustainable. Not the business I want to run, not the money I want to make. And then, I ended up getting a job with GE, which like took me kind of as far away from my kind of intended path as I ever expected. Right. But I was working on complex systems in the industrial space. So, you know, power plants and manufacturing facilities and wastewater treatment plants. That gave me a big picture understanding of process. It also gave me like, you know, hands-on experience. It was all field work. So you had to kind of like solve your problems with what you had. Which, you know, very much lended itself eventually to running a wall printing business. And, you know, I got a huge chemistry background, which tied itself into things like ink. And it was all those experiences that at the time I was like, when the hell am I ever going to use these things again?
Yeah, besides what you're doing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was very, very specialized, very focused, in a very niche industry. But, you know, those skill sets were kind of critical.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I went in a different direction. I started working for a company called Dirt, which was, I suppose, similar in the sense it was manufacturing, but we were manufacturing products. So it was like interior construction from software all the way through to finished product, manufacturing these like wall partitions, basically. But it exposed me to just a really lean manufacturing setup. So really appreciating what all of that was entailed. And I also got to see sort of like a vertical integration of like design all the way through to construction. Really fascinating role that I took on. Did a lot of product development, did a lot of process development, you know, did some inventing, all tied to a entrepreneur of entrepreneurs, Mogan Smed. Like, big shout out to Mogan's, who kind of like was my mentor for a bunch of years, basically like mostly on the sales to product development side of the business, which was really fascinating. It was really what was missing out of my university education. Is like, I certainly got a lot of the technical, but like never really had I never really had an exposure to like what that entrepreneurship rhythm looked like. Like, I knew I wanted to do it, and I knew I was probably well suited for it, but like didn't really have a roadmap to, you know. And where I would highly recommend anybody who's thinking about doing this is to go work for somebody that does it. It's like you pick up mostly just by being around them. It's like, and seeing how Mogan's and the Dirt team like just attacked every problem. Like, it was never sitting back. It was never taking a moment, never doing anything. It was like, man, jack that thing up to 60 miles per hour and let's see what happens, you know. I guess that's kind of
you really don't
speed. Yeah.
You really don't get a good understanding of what it takes to be an entrepreneur from a peripheral perspective of a business. You have to be in the trenches with the people making the decisions. I mean, that is the kind of entrepreneurial journey comes down to the decisions that are made at critical junctures of the business. And unless you're there in the room with the people that are making those decisions, becomes really hard to get a sense of how to make those decisions, how to prioritize, certain aspects.
Yeah, you just don't know is don't know, right? It's like if you've never done it, like that's what experience actually is, right? It's important to get valuable experience and to like be able to evaluate, like, is this what you want to do? Is this how you want to do it? And every day I worked at Dirt, I knew that like eventually in my future was going to be like, I want to be the captain of the ship. I want to see what happens. And funny enough, that's how we got reunited on wall printing was realizing, with respect to these wall partition systems, we were working with high-end clients. These are like high-end architectural firms. We looked at the Cupertino offices for Apple was a bid we looked at. Like we looked at a bunch of high-end things and, finding the start of these conversations always about what we could do and then seeing what you ended up with, like there's a bit of a gap. In particular, there was always seemed to me to be a bit of a gap with respect to graphics. And when I started looking at why, it was pretty clear that like graphics really doesn't belong as a part of the construction process. It's like its own thing. It was like expensive, hard to coordinate. It was very difficult to like get what you wanted. And so when you're in the middle of a construction process and you're looking at ways to save money or speed up, deal with like delays and things like that, like graphics was a pretty easy one to cancel. And so, sort of sitting in a printing shop in China, actually at the time, I was just like musing as I was watching this printer. I think we were about to buy one, or it was what a standard UV inkjet printer. I was with somebody trying to buy it. I was just sort of thinking about it. I'm like, I bet you could take that gantry and just stick it on the wall. Like, wouldn't that be cool if you just printed right there? Like, I wonder what that would take. And as it turns out, there were actually a couple Chinese companies, like one or two at the time, that had actually like done that. They literally did exactly that. They just took the exact same technology and pointed it up. I'm like, man, that's pretty cool. Like I'm trying to find a reason why that wouldn't work, besides the obvious, like it's super technical and complicated. Easy to say, like that's not exactly how that technological development.
Just print on the wall.
Yeah, just turn it. All you have to do is turn it 90. It works perfectly. Like it's very far from the process. But I ended up buying one, and then that's when I called you, right?
Yeah.
You remember what I said to you? Yeah. Do you remember how that conversation went?
Yeah, I got 2 words for you: wall printing.
Yeah,
or something like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Hey, how's that job at GE going, Cause? You're like, funny you mention it, Mark. Like I was actually just thinking about leaving. It's like, oh,
the timing couldn't have been any better. I mean, it was I'd already left with no plans for my future at that point. I put in my 5 years. I had a ton of experience. I knew that I had value, but I needed to break away and kind of reset my plan for the next 5. And so I was backpacking through Colombia with my girlfriend, now wife. When I got the call, and like we had kind of stayed in touch, but it was, through Facebook and all of that type of stuff. We, not necessarily the call once a month kind of guys. Right. So it was like, we knew what each other were up to. And I get this call in the middle of, a Colombian rainforest being like, oh, this is what I'm up to. What do you think? And are you interested? Do you want to come check it out? Basically that we had a conversation exactly like we had a longboarding conversation. All right, well, we have this thing, that's awesome. And I think people would love it. As Mark likes to pitch his ideas, it's like, look at this great thing. Then now where do you want to go? How do you want to take it? What do you want to do?
Totally. And there's something to be said about our dynamic that always seems to be the way that it goes is like, I very much push full steam ahead. I buy the equipment before we know what we're going to do with it. And then it's like, hey, Clauser, like I got this idea. Let's see if it works. And it's funny how we have this push-pull dynamic, and it does work for our business. And it morphed into this really nice, like I sort of stay on the sales front-end product development. You stayed on the like tech support back-end side of the company. It's funny how it kind of like split us into this nice, whatever it is, 7 years later. Like we've got a very simple dynamic that works really well for our personalities, I find.
Yeah. The partnership naturally kind of broke itself into two parts of the business, which just from anybody who's starting a business with a business partner and a friend, like that took a long time for us to establish. Not that there was any sort of like knocking of heads or anything like that, but it just like we had naturally found a rhythm that eventually worked for us because we're both skilled in both aspects of the business, right? You can live in the weeds, I can live on the sales calls, and vice versa. But eventually, you kind of have to divide and conquer once you start taking on bigger scale projects.
I think entrepreneurship is about like there's absolutely a massive degree of like finding out who you are. It's like, and I think what ends up happening inevitably is like you have to sort of be like, just because you can do it doesn't mean it's like good for you to be doing it for the business. Like you said, it's like our Venn diagram of skills is pretty deep. But I love sales. I gravitate naturally to it. It's something that like I take a lot of energy from. I really like doing it. And like, not to say that I don't have you as the sales thing, but it doesn't need to be your primary focus, right? And it's a nice natural divide for us. But
Yeah.
so
So
let's kick this back to the actual story. So after we got the Chinese printer, you were in my basement for what, like 2 weeks, I think it was.
I booked a flight in Colombia to fly to the West Coast of Canada. You were in Calgary at the time. Like I hopped over there immediately before, I think I was home for like 3 days, repacked my bags and flew out. And I think it was 2 weeks in your basement, and we call it the pretty picture. I mean, we got a beautiful image of a peacock feather on the wall. And it was like, well, shoot, if we can do this every time, like this is a business,
Definitely.
I think the pill every wall printer takes is like, well, if this is all it is, then my God, this is going to be aces, but that 2 weeks made us realize that was not the case.
Yeah, the technology, man, it's easy to flash it and show you like, pretty picture. It's easy to show you but to get to the actual like result, let's say there's printing and then there's results, and results can be very, very nuanced in this space. But we kind of quickly realized that at the time, the Chinese technology just wasn't up to snuff. There was a lot of reasons, but it just was clear that like some of the challenges we were having with it were not going to translate to a successful business. And so we kind of grabbed a beer and thought about it. It was basically like, okay, we can design our own, maybe, like, we're both engineers, we could definitely do that. But I think somewhere in our conversation, one of us had been like, I was researching and I found this other company, Wallpen. It seems like this guy's doing a lot of what we would otherwise want to see out of this technology. Like, do you think they want to work with us? Right. So
that was pretty much it. It existed. Again, at the time, there was really nothing. The only things online were the Chinese. Online looked different in 2017 that it did, that it does now, 2018. And Wallpen was just getting their feet under them. I think they had just put out a website, and it was after we built our.
It was the founder and one more guy, right? Like, is all they had at the
pretty
time.
much, yeah. In a what we soon to realize was like a garage shop in the rural hillsides of Germany. But after we built our list of how we would build a machine, we found Wallpen, and it checked a lot of those boxes. And as we do from Calgary, I think within 2 weeks we had booked a flight to Germany to go check it out.
That's right. Yeah, liked what we saw. It was a prototype, and soon to learn, like, actually very far from the ideal scenario that we were hoping for. But we liked what we saw and bought one, and kind of launched that whole journey that we've been on, up until very recently. We were working with them exclusively, helping with the development of the technology, kind of really mostly focused on, if there's the invention of the machine, well, we were sort of on the commercialization of the technology. So you have the machine, how do you make money with it? What is the correct price per square foot? How do you penetrate the market? What happens when you go deal with a client? Just kind of everything you need to know on running a wall printing business. So we made it pretty standard operating procedure for us. Right when we bought that printer, we decided we we're going to do two things. We'll sell the printer, of course, but let's also run a wall printing business so that we can speak directly to what our customers potentially would want to be doing.
Yeah, we knew the North American market was going to be primed for this type of service and this type of tech, especially given your background and everything, the reasons why you started exploring this in the first place. And so when we found Wallpen, it was let's bring this to North America, but nobody's going to adopt this unless they can see that there's a proven business model attached to it. And as we kind of explored, well, how do we go and do that? You naturally come to the same conclusion that, well, we have to do that. We can't expect to sell this to somebody and then, plan on them being successful to be our case study. Like, we got to be our own case study. So kind of coincided business plans. Let's start a print business, Concept Inc. We started running it out of Toronto, and then from there, let's see what this business has in store. Let's challenge our assumptions and kind of build out this market and get a roadmap for what this actually looks like. And those first 2018 to 2020, I think, is another kind of pivotal point. But those 2 years, there was a evolution of technology. Wallpen went from the E1 to the E1 Plus, and just a 600 plus days of failures, all the way up to 2020.
brutal. Anyone out there who's had a failed print on site, like, we feel for you. That's one of the worst feelings you can get. We were doing it. We were failing like 9 out of 10 times in some capacity. Like, it was very hard to get the result, but we kept inching it along, piece by piece, bit by bit, job by job. Like, it just slowly kept, it always worked just enough for us to not quit. That's how I always thought. It was like, dude, but when it does work, like, holy cow, imagine if it was like the same feeling we had when we were in the basement, right? Thinking about it, like, yeah, but if we can get this result, like, this is pretty sweet. Like, people are going to want to buy
do
this.
it. The results do warrant, the money
Yeah.
that we're charging for these prints. It's just a matter of getting this consistent. We got to be able to reproduce these results every time on site. And I think the thing that kept me going, and you can agree or not, but it was whether we failed or succeeded on site with any of our customers, it was the response we got from the customers when they saw what we were trying to do. And, even the half results garnered such a positive, such positive feedback that it was, incredibly motivating to be like, all right, if we can just continue to push forward, this is going to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And then the E2 dropped and kind of changed everything for us.
Yeah, I mean, just glazing over the entire COVID saga, but
everybody had COVID. Like, everybody kind of gets it. I think it's like it was a mess. The whole society was a mess. There was obviously no business for us. There was no way to like make that work. We kind of hunkered down. What was nice about it is it did give the wall pen team a chance to really flesh out the E2, which was a triumph. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. It's a fantastic machine. That took 18 months probably to get to a point where it was really like actually solid enough to be doing what we did, but it was such an evolutionary step for them into something that like in towards stability that it was a different game once it dropped.
It required people in the field to be able to demonstrate what was failing. And I mean, COVID was interesting in that there was, everybody was trying to deal with it, but how we entered it, I think, is actually important to the next phase, because it was this, like, we got the latest, which was the E1 Plus, and we ran a construction. We were part of a major commercial construction project or contest for green construction methods, and so we were applying the graphics. Anyways, in January of 2020, we made a huge splash in Toronto, and all of the largest firms saw what we were capable of, saw the technology, and we thought that, like, all right, these are the inroads that we were going to need to kind of really launch this industry and launch the business. We had 3 major demos and lunch and learns the third week of March of 2020, and the whole world shut down the week prior, and we lost all of those leads. Everybody pushed weeks to months, and we thought we were going to have to start over. And then over that time frame, the technology improved. The E2 then eventually launched, and that really reignited the, like, okay, let's actually run this business now with a piece of tech that is at least stable enough to run a business off of.
Yeah. And then that kind of created the diaspora of wall printing experts you find across North America. Like, I probably at some point talked to us, or at least evaluated some of our content and things like that. And, we got over 60 operators currently in the US and growing. We still work, and that sort of launched our newest initiative. Right, takes you up to date of we're no longer associated with Wallpen, still love them, still think it's a fantastic machine, but there's so much more in this industry to grow that we wanted to share our love with kind of everybody all at the same time. It kind of became an opportunity for us to flex what we really felt was important, which is, how do you create a business off of this technology? How do you leverage what it is? And we're starting to see some really fascinating technology come out of China. They're really changing the way that they're doing things. It's been very, very interesting to see the various ways they've responded. We've learned a ton, now that we're not exclusive to Wallpen, we've sort of been able to really, really dive into the technology and really say, like, what is this doing? How is this doing it? And what can we do if we keep our focus on the business itself? What should the technology be? Right. We're starting to see some fascinating
and
things
what aspects of the technology actually have an impact on the business at hand, from running our own business, our own 6-figure business here in Toronto, and then helping, over 60 operators kind of start theirs. We now have a really clear insight on, like, what aspects of wall printing from a tech perspective contribute to success on the business side of things. Because at the end of the day, as enamored as we are from wall printing tech and seeing pretty pictures on the wall and all of those things, like, we are trying to build a business, and it is what aspects of the technology kind of enhance your ability to have a successful business. And it's
Yeah.
always about the business end of things, which is where the Wall Print Academy kind of stemmed from. Was this like, if you're only selling tech, you're focused on the technology and not the business. And it was in our distribution side of sales that we realized as we were talking to these customers that, like, now if we can provide business support, that's what's really going to drive them towards a successful business. The technology is just a facet of that, but there's so many other kind of pillars, as we call them, to running a successful wall printing business. And as we started coaching operators on some of those pillars, we realized that, like, well, this industry as a whole needs more discussion around what it's like to operate the business. At the end of the day, like, if you're going to be buying one of these printers, it's like, okay, you have the printer, now what? What does it look like to be on site? How does it feel to print a job? How are you going to quote and charge your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, it's just funny, man, sitting here going through our story and thinking through like all the various ways, it is kind of interesting that we ended up where we did, because it's all about, like, for us, merging that art and technology has always been a very, the Longboards, it was like beautiful curves, beautiful lines, wood grain, natural aesthetic. With the wall printing, again, the technology, I think, is always going to be in a constant state of flux and change. And you're going to see new machines with new capabilities. And, at the end of the day, though, what's interesting about it is the application. You know what I mean? If you've watched any of our stuff, you'll know one of my biggest lessons is, like, don't sell the technology, sell what the technology does. And that's what's been super fun in the past year, has been like really being able to focus on, like, this is the nexus between technology and art, which, like, the art side of things is as crucial. And I certainly think going forward going to be the most crucial, because you're going to assume the printer works. You're going to assume you know how that goes. I think you're going to see 4 or 5 stable technologies out there that do various things that you'll be able to get an image like this, no problem. But how do you generate this is what's interesting, and how does that tie to a business, and how do you sell it, and what does it look like? And then one of the ones that's definitely coming out of 2025 that has been, you'll see, I don't know if your podcast is with that conversation with Ryan has dropped, but, like, how do you take this to an enterprise level? How do you take this from a single machine, single person making $1,000, $2,000 a week, which is fantastic, don't get me wrong, it's really, really good part of the business, but, like, okay, you got a hotel chain called and they want a whole bunch of work done. You've got hospitals, you've got, major spaces, major players coming out being like, can you do a lot of it? How do you scale this technology into that? And you're going to see this take over. This is going to become the competitor to vinyl. I think in the next 3 years, you're going to start seeing some major shifts away from vinyl towards this.
Yeah, I agree. And that's part of the journey for anybody who's already in the space, with a printer. Everybody knows that the hardest part, one of the hardest parts is educating the market, because most people don't know this exists. If you're watching this, then at least you're part of the very small subset of the population that actually understands what wall printing is and part of its value. But going out and selling this, there is an education component to it. But the more people that are out there successfully printing projects, and customers who are realizing what those advantages of wall printing are, the more the market's going to grow and expand, and you're going to start to see more people providing services and more demand for those services. The graphic space is huge. You just Google sign shop in any major city, and you're going to find dozens, if not hundreds, of sign shops servicing explicitly this market, right?
It's crazy, man. Once you start looking for it, it's insane. I was actually just picking up something from FedEx, and they were advertising some printing services. So they had, like, banner printing, they had canvas printing, like long, the style of canvas where it's 3 long, skinny canvases that make, like, one image.
Yep.
$200 they wanted for that.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I looked at it, I'm like, man, I'll do that for 100. Like, that's easy. The canvases are like $10. I think it was just in Michael's. There was a pack of 3 for like $12 for almost exactly what they had there. It's just like, you look at all the applications and places that you could potentially use this. It really is going to change how. There's so much to be done. There's so many places you can use this. That's the exciting part, is, like, as more people get it, we're going to start seeing better and better ideas, better styles, better applications, all kinds of different really fun stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably one of the places that I'm most excited to see evolve, or the application side of this thing. I mean, we call it wall printing, but really it's vertical printing. It's a high definition UV printer on the vertical axis. So it's going to take up less space, so you can run a print shop on things. You can be printing signs and signboards for different industries and products on Etsy or your own online store. I think the application side of vertical printing, by taking a printer and turning it on the vertical axis is going to open up a whole slew of applications that we just like haven't really tapped yet. And that's where my head goes when I'm envisioning what's in store in the future for wall printing.
Thanks for hanging out with us and letting us share a bit of our backstory. Now, if you're still with us, chances are you're serious about launching your own wall printing business or are already on your journey. If you haven't already, click the link in the description below to join the Wall Print Academy today. We built it to be the resource we wish we had when we started. It includes step-by-step strategies, insider tips, and a community that's growing every day. The best next step? Check out our episode with Ryan. He's an operator who's working on a 100-room project for a major hotel chain. We break down pricing, logistics, marketing, and everything in between. It's packed with real-world insights that can help you level up fast. We'll catch you in the next one.